So, lots of tabs means one thing, which is lots of stories to cover as always, and lots of debunking to do. So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about Brexit set to make the UK more dependent on food imports, MPs warn. Now, this comes off the back of another story where we talked about how there will be a shrinkage basically in the industry because of the end of freedom of movement, and we haven't really done anything with regards to getting British people to start working in the fields more or getting people further afield to work in the fields more. So, essentially, we're seeing huge labour shortages. It does go back over the other segment we covered. I don't want to go over it too much because we already did that. But labour shortages, largely caused by Brexit, are set to make Britain more dependent on food imports. MPs have warned. A new report by the Commons Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee said UK food production industry would permanently shrink unless the problems are dealt with. Because farmers are already kind of sowing less. But the thing is, if they can't pick the reduced amount, it's going to cause a massive spiral of them just, farming less, essentially. They could use the land for environmental purposes, but at the end of the day, farms have to sow a certain amount in order to make a profit. That's the top and bottom of it, really. It comes despite some Brexiteers saying leaving the EU could make Britain more self-sufficient in food, and that was really the only way that could happen is if we completely cut ourselves off from the EU countries, which wouldn't have worked. You would have seen mass starvation. Oh wait, we already see starvation under the Tories, but it would have been the scarcity levels would have been far higher. MPs say vacancies in food production sector are estimated to be 500,000 out of 4.1 million roles in August 2021. These labour shortages due principally to Brexit and the pandemic, the MP said, citing evidence from industry leaders. But the thing is, pandemic impacts are temporary, and most likely they won't be in effect this year, depending on what the Tories actually do. But Brexit is permanent, for now at least. And so these will be year-on-year problems that we will face. Seasonal agricultural labourers from the EU who previously helped with the harvest, worked during the harvest each year, now need to apply for a work scheme, and many are staying away because there are language barriers, financial barriers as well. You have to go through the rigmarole of getting a visa. I don't know how much you have to pay, but there are NHS surcharges as well, potentially, amongst other things. And these are barriers for people when they can go to other EU countries to farm. Other countries are agriculturally powerful. They may not grow exactly the same stuff as we do, but they still have summer harvests and winter harvests, essentially. As a result, MPs and industry figures have said crops are going unharvested and rotting in the fields. We found clear evidence that labour shortages have badly affected the food and farming industry, threatening food security. And in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we can see how important food security is when certain products that are typically exported from Ukraine are going up in price. If the UK didn't have such a strong sector in growing wheat, we would be susceptible to a lot of increases in the price of wheat as well. That's another problem. The welfare of animals, so essentially animals are kind of overgrowing in the farms. That's a huge problem, and they're being incinerated. They're not being killed by skilled butchers. Essentially, they're being incinerated and things like that. And the mental health of those working in the sector. If you're think about a farmer, if you own a farm, or if you have everyone who works in the farm has a stake in the farm, essentially, not financially, but in terms of your employment. And you've got to think, if you spend, farming is hard work. If you spend so much time, putting effort into growing plants or rearing animals, and at the end of the day you can't get those crops or those animals to market, it's going to have a massive effect on your mental health as well. If you put so much work into things, I feel that sometimes with the channel, and I'm sure other people do with whatever projects they do as well, where you put so much effort into something and you just can't get it to work. That's it's heartbreaking. The food sector is the UK's largest manufacturing sector. Didn't know that, but faces permanent shrinkage if a failure to address its acute labour shortages leads to wage rises. And the thing is, there's so many jobs off the back of this. We've talked about how important something like beetroot farming is, where it supports the sugar industry in the UK. So you got wage rises, not necessarily a bad thing. Price increases can be a bad thing, but at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing in the world, but people need a lot more financial support if prices do go up, which we're not seeing from the Tory government. Reduced competitiveness, which is a huge problem as well, and ultimately food production being exported and increased imports. So essentially we are, helping other countries out and putting ourselves out really. Especially with all the problems of getting things through the Dover Calais crossing. All of this food is going to still go through SPS checks, whether it comes from the EU or elsewhere, and that crossing is having so many problems, right? If we have to import more food from the EU or further afield, you're still going to have problems at major ports, which we're already facing. Hull is facing problems. We've talked about that. Dover. The other ones, Felixstowe, I think, is another one. All of these ports are facing major problems. The same committee also found in January that blind optimism shown by ministers about their plans for post-Brexit farming subsidies could drive UK farms out of business and also increase reliance on food imports. And that statement there, blind imports, is true, and blind optimism is true, because that's all they've said. Get Brexit done. All this stuff will be great. All these other things, right? That's all they have is blind optimism, because once the reality hits, you realise these people are all frauds. This committee, is full of Tories, because Tories are predominantly in rural areas. They also have a majority as well, which means they get more committee places. But it just goes to show you that even Tory MPs are realising how bad the situation is. The UK currently imports 48% of the total food it consumes, a proportion which has been rising consistently. I didn't actually believe that number, but okay, I thought it'd be far higher. Some Tories have previously suggested Brexit could make Britain more self-sufficient and grow more of its own food. You can grow more food, sure. Who's going to pick it though? Who's going to process it? Not us, evidently. 2017 Brexit then cabinet member, the genius himself, Chris Grayling, said a hard Brexit could mean that producers, supermarkets brought more at home, that British farmers produced more. The thing is, supermarkets do buy a lot of British produce. I think we farm about 70% of the land that we can farm, if that makes sense, based on something Victoria Apprentice said previously and something I googled. British farmers produce more, which, okay, it's fine, but again, who's going to process it? That they brought more from around the world, which is going to happen, but you still face problems with the import systems. Ahead of the Brexit vote, Truss, who is now Foreign Secretary, said it was a disgrace that Britain imported so much of the fruit and cheese it consumed, which, again, I really don't care. Like, if it's stuff we can't grow in this country or make in this country, then that's fine. We make certain cheeses that people in Britain like and people around the world like, and people around the world make cheese that British people like. There's no issue here. Certain fruits we can't grow. That's fine. We import them. We can't grow things like citrus in this country. I like citrus. MPs on the Environment Committee said they were struck by government's failure to grasp the labour issues, which, surprise, surprise, is now facing the food sector. They've been warning since January. Last January they were facing problems. It's only in October and November when the government did anything with issuing visas. It was too late. The only reason we had enough turkeys was because we imported so many. Calling on ministers to radically shift their attitudes, they claimed the government had failed to demonstrate a strong understanding of the issues and even sought, in some instances, pass the blame onto the sector on the basis of incorrect information about its own immigration system. And that's something we spoke about in the previous video. The government doesn't properly understand its own immigration system. Therefore, if you cannot understand something, how can you advise on it? It just doesn't make sense. They were telling Cheshire Cheeseman, set up a subsidiary within the EU, which is great. It means that he can avoid a lot of problems, but it takes money out of the UK and puts it into the EU, which I thought we wanted to take back control, guys. Neil Parish, the Conservative MP who chairs the committee in 2021, said farmers faced an extraordinary situation. Crops were being left to rot in the fields and healthy pigs were culled due to a lack of workers. And again, we can train people to do these jobs if they want to do them. A butcher is a skilled job. Working at abattoirs is skilled work. And it takes a certain type of person to be able to deal with raw meat. I sort of terrified of raw chicken. For example, I wouldn't be able to cut it in an abattoir, pun intended. This has serious implication for the well-being of people who want to put food on our tables and in the future. This is something the Tory government had never cared about, though, people being able to put food on the table, unless their own table. The government's attitude to the plight of food and farming workers was particularly disappointing. It might be the case these MPs are kicking up a fuss because some of their constituents are farmers. I reckon it's probably that. He added, while some of the reforms put forward by government have helped in the short term, not really helped that much, and we agreed that we must look to expand the domestic workforce. That won't happen overnight. That probably won't happen at all, to be honest. Even more importantly, government must change its attitude to the food and farming sector, trusting them and acting promptly when they raise concerns. Our food and farmers depend on it, which the government have been consistently kind of ignoring the National Farmers Union. There was something else I wanted to talk about, which is geography. So if we look here, right? Okay, this is us, the United Kingdom, right? You might be viewing from further afield, but bear with me. This is us here. Then you got multiple EU countries here, 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 here. I don't know if Romania is an EU country. I think it is. Here, all right. You got Finland, Sweden, Norway, which has its own arrangements. Fine. Same with Iceland, right? Look at how far away non-EU countries are. You got Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Turkey, right? Look how far away these countries are. Even if you look at the Americans, there's a whole goddamn ocean in the way. Look at that. That's a huge ocean. You got Canada here, the United States here, and you'll be importing from the Midwest. So those are the agricultural powers, I believe, in America. So be around down here, which is further away as well, because you've got to go up and around, sort of thing, rather than if you went to, say, New York or Nova Scotia, these sorts of places. And if we look around the back end of the world, right, not the back end in a derogatory term, right, but you've got countries where we can export or import from. You've got India, Pakistan, China, Australia, all the way down here, New Zealand, right? Look how far the distances are. So even if we started importing from the rest of the world, the Brexiteers don't actually understand geography. The rest of the world is very far away compared to the EU. That's a key problem, right? And by us cutting ourselves off from these markets here, we can export to Brazil, fine, and we can import meat from Brazil, fine. They have lower standards than us, but geography is a massive barrier to this. The costings of shipping, very expensive, especially when you got to take into account Boris Johnson's net zero targets as well. That adds a lot of environmental damage, rather than if we farmed as much as we could in the UK, or just imported from, say, France, which is here, just very close. Look, you can almost touch it. Look at that. But yeah, anyways, I'm going to leave it there. People actually swim across this channel. That's how small it is. You don't see someone swim from the UK to Brazil, but people can swim from Britain to France, for example. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Brexiteers don't understand geography or seem to understand the situation they put the country in. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel and Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.